one by one. We start with the leader of the opposition. Thank you very much, and now I invite you to see the
Thank you, Pres. Ladies and gentlemen, the other points on the agenda continues with presentation by both Honorable Francis Fonseca and Mr. Rogers. But before we get to that, I just want to, perhaps housekeeping more than anything else, when your hosts organized this evening's event, one of the things that we really wanted to do was, wherever humanly possible, to keep the discussion to the areas, to getting feedback from the fine gentlemen to the areas that we've presented. Having said that, and the President mentioned earlier on that on Friday the 9th, we provided the sustainability agenda to all the parties, inclusive of the Office of the Prime Minister. And because of that time to review the sustainability agenda, we feel that we can have a robust and respectful conversation this evening. Having said that, and not because I think anyone has a bad memory, we also agreed that as right before we get started, I was to remind everybody by just going really quick through the main points that we want to flesh out, or we'd like our guests to flesh out. Pillar 1, e-government. Under e-government, we have e-government, point number 1, the development of a public procurement website. Pillar 2, corruption. We have transparency on all public bodies. Number 4, we have reactivate the Integrity Commission and enlarge its scope. Number 5, adoption of the UN Charter on Corruption and CARICOM Charter on Procurement. Number 6, the adoption of the mechanism for the follow-up on the implementation of the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption. Number 3, political and public sector reform. Conduct public sector reform. Several points under that. We have empowered the Senate to fulfill its obligations as per the Constitution. Correct the structural flaw in the composition of the Public Accounts Committee. Expand the power and scope of the Auditor General. Under number 4, development of a national credit reporting system. Then we have the reduction of crime, reduce taxes, cost of doing business, strengthening of the financial services sector. Steve is very important. And finally, immigration and enhanced legislative reform. We ask that we look at increased human capital to improve the human capital and employment pool, that we look at various things under immigration and enhanced legislative reform. Ladies and gentlemen, I say again, these are the main points that we hope to discuss tonight. Having said that, we start with Party Leader Patrick Rogers from the Belize Progressive Party. Mr. Rogers.
Pleasant good evening. I want to say how honored I am to have been invited here to express where it is that we're coming from as far as the new direction we want to take this country. First of all, after reviewing this document, I wondered how much on it will read your mind, because there's not a whole lot here that we want to change. We do want to add to what you are presented here. And we must say that we are in line 100% with e-government. As a computer programmer myself, that was one of the things that I had recommended from the early 1990s, that we move in that direction. So of course the BPP has no problem accepting in its entirety the pillar number 1 under e-government. The thing is that we believe that It's a form of decentralizing the government. So for someone to come from PG to apply for a passport or something, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So certainly with the government put in place, that would be easy to accommodate, and the person will have to take that trip to pick up the passport. So definitely we're in line with that. The development of a public procurement website is very much needed. It's something that will bring about the transparency and ensure that we're adhering to the international standards required in competitive biddings. Today, in the absence of something like this, we don't even get to see these things until they're officially granted, and you see who that is in tender, who that is in tender, and what else, but after the fact. So certainly, the issue of a short list of contractors that are being invited to bid on special government projects will be removed with this second point in your pillar number 1 for e-government. So certainly, we accept that point in its entirety. Moving along, as we look at the corruption issue, now here is where we would want to add to what was presented to us, because we're saying that to fix the problem we're in, we would be looking for you all for a lot of leadership, because we're from the mindset that it's a private sector that will grow the economy. We're going down the wrong road with the government being the major employer. Once we're building that way, when the law has been done, that means the economy goes down. However, the issue of corruption is not only the public sector domain, because it takes collusion for corruption to occur. And I want to say is that a lot of the ideas that we've been putting out there, policy positions that we'd like to see adopted, came right from the public service. Because we've been consulting with the top brass of all the ministries, and we've been identifying the problems as they see it, because they're in the trenches and they see what are some of the problems. And the solutions that they've been suggesting, it's quite obvious after they put it forth. So as an example, a retired brother from Customs, he said, but Mr. Rogers, the problem at Customs is easy to fix. He said, if you put one camera where the vehicle enter, one camera where they exit, then all you need is to have the number of entries that shows the number of license plate passed through. Wow, fantastic idea. Because you see, we cannot expect the mayhem, which is the blue-collar crime of the gun, to go down when it is established that corruption has one direct correlation with the level of the price. So the corruption, by not collecting the revenues, would involve one business sector individual not being a good corporate citizen and breaking the law in collaboration with one public sector individual. So we're saying that, yes, we want to be partners with the members of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, but it has to be a two-way street, where the issue of corruption will really be tackled at its root. And our position is a zero tolerance on corruption. We know there will never be 0% corruption. But a government that is elected with the moral authority can take a zero tolerance on corruption. And by so doing, at the first instance of its rearing its head, we would be dealing with one business sector, individual, and the public sector, just to ensure that there will be penalties to have the business sector stop doing what they're doing. Because to me, as I said, I can't expect the man in the street to be one good individual citizen and not hold the corporate citizens to task as well. It's a responsibility of the corporate citizen to ensure they are adhering by the laws and not engage in the public sector in corruption. So we want to be partners, but we want the business sector to understand it's a two-way street, brothers and sisters. We all have to look ourselves in the mirror and say that Belize has changed because I have changed and my business has changed. Until we reach that point, we cannot expect the crime at the street level to go down, which I see in one of the last pillars there. So to me, they're tied together, right? We are addressing corruption, it's at the business level, but we're talking about mayhem in the street, which individuals breaking the law. Having said that, we would press the reset button. We wouldn't be going backwards, but we would be looking to everybody, as we said, to take on clean slate and say, whatever I did yesterday, I want the reason to change. I want to have free education, not only for my kids, but for every other kid in Belize. And the way we will do that is giving the government more revenues by just paying our fair share of taxes. Having said that, Next issue on the corruption here, we wanted to shed some light on. The Integrity Commission. You've all heard 25 candidates, and yes, I did say 25, because we've done a fantastic job of recruiting. Once we've amalgamated into a national party, the recruiting was a lot easier, and in 2 weeks' time, we've gone from 11 to 25 candidates. But we've explained to all those candidates that, it doesn't matter that the Integrity Commission is not functioning this way. When we are elected, we will be disclosing all our assets and liabilities and our sources of income upon being elected, but we will actually have them presenting it to us, all candidates, before being elected. Any candidate elected, then within the time prescribed by law, they will be presenting that. Once in our members, they build up too much houses run when their income before getting elected doesn't show how they could have done that. Adoption of the Union Charter and Corruption and CARICOM Charter and Procurement. From 2003, I think it was, we've been calling for successive governments to sign on to this convention. Until we do that, we're paying lip service to trying to bring down the level of corruption in this country. Because the reason Guatemala is able to take on president, at least in front of a judge, and in Honduras you see vice president resigning and stuff coming under pressure, not resigning, as a matter of fact, was actually charged. It's because those countries have signed on to this convention. And this convention mandates that an autonomous body be created where no senator, as you were rejected with information, although there's a Freedom of Information Act, the good senator there have been waiting for information and can't get access to it. Well, once that autonomous body is set up, the instances of corruption that is occurring in this country will be able to be proven. So we don't have to accept any prime minister telling us, believe me, we're not happen. We need to have this body set up, and it won't be there until we sign on to this convention. Rest assured, the BPP will make that one its first priority to sign and ratify that convention. Moving right along, Pillar 3. Political and public sector reform. I love it. Everything we see here we can accept in its entirety. However, we want to go back with it. We want to say that what has made corruption become so widespread is the marrying of the executive officer post, which was one advisor in policy to the minister, along with that permanent secretary, which was one technocrat with all training needed and expertise needed in that ministry, but who learned to adhere to procedures. So you have the UDP government at the time introducing the executive officer that in an organizational chart is not above the PS, was off to the side in an advisory capacity to advise in policy. That was a good move, I thought. That was a good move because if the minister does not have the competence required or the skill required, there's nothing wrong with him going outside of that house to get one technocrat. And it will be a political apology, yes. Naturally, it will be a party supporter, maybe with the other two parties. Doesn't have to be with the BPP because you will certainly welcome the best minds to start fixing this thing. So if it happens that we would need to go for an EXO outside of the BPP, that won't be a problem, I'm assure you. However, until we separate that job function of making sure procedures are being adhered to from the function of advising on policy, the door for corruption has been swallowed wide open. So we would want to recommend and have the CEO position being taken out of the civil service. It's a private sector thing. That CEO is a private sector thing. In fact, most of the CEOs come from the private sector, not having one knowledge of procedures in those ministries. And that CEO is more concerned about adhering to the minister's request than about ensuring procedures are being adhered to. So to add to this political and public sector reform, the BPP would like to say that we will be doing everything to go back to that EXO and PS, where right now we would have been in the hands of a PS instead of CEOs who were appointed by the existing government and still pushing through this government's policy, although the National Assembly had been dissolved. In our paradigm, the PS will be there, the EXO will resign, we are there upon the dissolution of the House, And the PS is someone we can trust because we know they're there on merit. The campaign finance reform. This is the genesis of the process. We couldn't even open on bank accounts. I don't know how the other parties do it, but we have good business people that came to us with checks. I'm not ashamed of anybody seeing that. I am donating to the BPP because I believe this country needs to go in a different direction. So we have some great business people stepping up and putting checks, not one plastic bag of money, because we're trying to be transparent and accountable before we get into government. You can't tell me you're not going to do it now, and when you get elected you won't do it. That's not how the human operates. You are what you are. So as an accountant, we understand the need to be transparent and accountable, and we're trying to practice that right at this moment. And we're being told we can't open a bank account because of this and that and all the things, and we have to go back to some of the donors and ask them to put checks in our individual names so we can cash the check. So I'm saying that yes, we will be addressing campaign financing reform in a fashion where we believe that the government should finance the campaign. Right? Secondly, we had a 1.5 million for each party. Actually, the running lead party with a budget of 150,000 that we hope to reach. We're not even at 50,000 in contributions this year. But this thing is about how much sign you could put on lamp posts, or how much flags you could put on lamp posts, or how much t-shirt you could have to give away to people that don't wear it, sitting with a t-shirt in their back pocket. So I'm saying that until we address the issue of campaign financing, the big business will slip the bag of money underneath the table will continue to be slipping that big bag underneath the table, and that big bag got chain on it, not ropes, chain. So yes, we will be looking at enacting stiff campaign financing regulation. We will be passing regulations requiring political parties to register. I mean, think about it, brothers and sisters. It's the only entity that is not regulated in this country. Every other entity has laws that govern their operations, except for the Pickstock and political party. So we're saying that yes, for our own self, we will be registering the BPP as one cooperative because we don't believe Patrick, as the political leader, should be the owner of the assets that this party will eventually achieve, because we have only print shop over the try to get up and running and things like that. Those will be held in cooperative ownership until such time as we could get political parties legislation passed. Moving along, empowerment of the Senate to fulfill its obligation as per the Constitution. We support that, although the enhanced Senate is not our ideal situation, we can support the enhanced Senate as a step in the right direction. Anything that will curb the power of that almighty cabinet is a step in the right direction. Anything that involves the social partners that will not care to go through that dirty election process is a help to the electoral, to the political environment. So we're saying we don't have a problem with the enhanced Senate, but we will be putting on referendums, which is a tool that neither government seems to want to use. We will be putting within 100 days after being elected the list of items that we would want to put on a referendum, because there's a lot of things that we need to be instructed on. Take, for example, just as an example, the LGBT agenda. I may have my own views on that, but it's not the purview of a party or the leader of a party to say that this is what needs to be done. So you put it on a referendum along with every other thing else that you see needs to go on that referendum, since it's expensive to have. And within 6 months after being elected, you could be called on the election on a referendum to be instructed on matters that needs to be addressed of national concern. So yes, we accept the public, political and public sector reform funds that you all have laid out, but we do believe the issue of reinstituting the PS and the issue of using referendums in that period that you're in government. It shouldn't be that we just get one time to vote and give away our power in the stroke of a pen and have to wait 5 years or 3 years and 8 months as in this case, or whatever period between elections, to be able to wield the power of it. If the power is really with the people, then let the people instruct the government as to how they feel these matters should be dealt with. Establishing a fixed date for general elections, that's like a dream of mine. That's like a dream of mine. We 100% endorse this. If the people want 4-year terms, it doesn't matter. 5-year, 6-year term, it does not matter. What matters is that the election date needs to be fixed. It would remove that power from the Prime Minister that they have to play games with when the election will be called. Look at what happened to us. If this election was all the way down in 2017 when it was due, we would have had ample time to do what we're doing or what we did, thanks to the Almighty, within 2 weeks to be able to get to the table people that want to see a change in direction. And at the end of the Lands and Survey Department reform, oh man, not that of corruption, right? Is that what the Prime Minister said about it? And he's absolutely right. And each government in their turn had an opportunity to fix what was going on there. Neither did, and I don't expect any of them to in the future, because they're the easiest hustlers, they're the biggest hustlers in this country. Look at the free zone. The only thing that thing did for Belize and make one few landowners, make one whole lot of money. The free zone, land sales, and then building, we never know. Now we're seeing where San Pedro and Placencia, all lands are being sold to foreigners that come into this country and are not being held responsible for any type of the environmental laws that we have. I do accounting, and I have clients that are in the tourist sector, and I assure you, most of the people that come to our country will not respect our laws because they find only $2,000. So why should I be putting my pair here, cutting down some mangrove and stuff, when they really find that there's one slap on the wrist? So all of these things need to be looked at the land department in a holistic kind of way, that when we're selling off them prime properties, we must ensure that Belizeans have more right to ownership in those lands. Once those things are sold off, it's very difficult for us here, not to allow Belizean business interests, to find the kind of money needed to buy that land back. When you're gone, you're gone. Now there's still a lot of seafront that we have that is not accessible as yet, that we intend to put the clamps on and ensure that those remain in a Belizean ownership hand. So as your partners in developing this country, and knowing that you all are needed, because not everybody don't entrepreneur, and not everybody capable of creating the jobs that this country so badly needs. So we're looking at working with you all in divesting some from just commerce, because remember, this body should be the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. But where's the industry? So we're saying that we're looking to you all, you very business people that engage mainly in commerce and trade, to start divesting and looking at the productive sector. Mr. Hurry can tell you, he's an accountant like myself. The only time you create wealth is when you produce something. Whether they're farming or industries where you the value add. That is the only point wealth is being created. So to be thinking that we could grow this country, focusing on just the service sector, we're going down the wrong road. Now we're not looking to remove you all and bring in a new set of people to be pushing the productive sector. No, that's not it. We're looking to how we can partner with you all, because we know when we have the brain capacity needed to help us come up with diversification plans. Start producing more of what we consume. Most business people I know have plenty farm, but they don't put attention into it. They still focus on the service sector that they're in. However, we cannot sustain this country by just looking at the service sector. We need to look at the productive sector, and that starts with some serious land reform. So the policies that we would like to put together would require input from you all as to what sectors of the agro-industries you all feel would be most viable to invest in. We're looking at setting up mutual funds where you all could contribute into, and the government will be matching that and prioritizing what agro-industries need to be focused on at different stages as we develop this country. But we can only develop our economy if we understand that we need to move first to producing what we consume. Once we get to producing what we consume, the excesses will start becoming the raw materials provided. Whether that is set up on cannery, and then the things that are wrapped in the ground, we could make, pineapple used to be sliced and canned here in Belize. I'm 50 years old, I'm sure everybody in my age group that were here before 1981 knew that there were canneries in this country, knew that there were railroad tracks in this country. Now, those are the things that we need to be thinking about, right? We need to be thinking 100 years from now, we see our railroad track development in this country, we see our road right down with all of this stuff, to ensure that it's been made available to Belizeans' interest for the agricultural sector, which is the basis of where industry starts from, right? Industry never started in a vacuum. It starts by taking the necessary agricultural produce and doing value add to it instead of letting it there on the ground to rot. So we need to ensure we take control of the lands where available to make it available for the agricultural sector that needs to get some attention. Moving along, and by the way, I must apologize. When I'm not held to a type presentation, right? I could get kind of lengthy, but we've been waiting so long for this opportunity to address you all and share some of the ideas that we have that, in my parent, I have to give me a little cue as a president, when I need to tone it down. Economic and social and financial reform. Development of a national credit reporting system, yes, very much needed. From the time Mr. Underwood started building that thing, I was one of the Belizean business people who told him, this is a needed tool in Belize. Because there's a lot of people who I'm sure you all have had bumps that one have to deal with. You have people coming and applying for credit that are not credit worthy. So certainly something like that would help the chamber in ensuring there's less bad debts to be dealing with or less losses due to not having a credit reporting system. Reducing the crime rate. Reducing the crime rate, we agree with you. There must be more resources placed in our police department, with DVF, the Coast Guards. Yes, more resources are needed. But more than the resources needed and expanding those departments is addressing why it is that the youth man will pick up the gun. And why he's picking up the gun is because we haven't created an alternative for that. So we cannot just say we want to bring down the crime rate without, as I say, holistically looking to the corporate citizens to be paying their fair share of taxes, to give us the revenues needed to make free education and healthcare a reality. Because we can only pay lip service to it like the other two parties do because of the revenue base that the government has to work with. So certainly we want to see the crime rate come down, and we plan to do it by bringing down the level of corruption. Yes, we will expand the police department, but we will expand it by ensuring that their training go up from the 1 year or 9 months that they get to 2 years so that they can learn to give respect to us, the citizens. I mean, I live in Southside Belize. I've seen our police vehicles pull up. Our grandfather is 65-year-old with one grandson in his teenage year. And the way the police come and disrespect that grandpa and just have him at ground, just like Lee's grandson, when he's trying to stand up for his grandson, they treat him like he's a Lee boy too. So we're saying that, yes, we see expanding the forces as needed, but we need to let them learn to deal with people in a respectful manner. You can't come and disrespect the citizenry and expect them to bite their tongue, because it's in our nature where if you come aggressively at me, I'm going to be aggressive in how I respond to you. So those are the type of training that we believe are needed with our security forces to ensure that they become part of the we envision that is needed to fix this problem the country is in. Reduce taxes, cost of doing business. Certainly, we don't have a problem with reducing tax burden on you all. We feel like you're being overburdened with taxes. The problem is that there is a big revenue pool there that is not being tapped into. And that is the foreign direct investment that comes into this country and receives the fiscal incentives, what we call concessions. And those concessions need to be under review, because these concessions are given out and they're not reviewed. There are terms to those concessions that, if reviewed, the government may find that, you know what, you don't need that 20 years that we gave you to not pay taxes because you're not adhering to the terms of the concession. If you're not prepared to do what is required by that, then we're prepared to revoke that concession and have you be just one regular corporate citizen and pay your fair share of taxes here. Because you're not necessarily bringing the top jobs to Belize. Most foreign direct investors will still bring in their top level managers to run the operation, and what remains for us Belize and that is menial jobs. So we want to look at the amount of concessions that this country has been given out and see how we can shorten the number of years that concessions are given for. And let's be real, Equal is a 50-year. Norwegian Cruise Line is 20 years. Those companies are making multi-million dollars in profits, and the government doesn't get a penny from them. That is why we're a poor labor nation. In other industrialized nations, they don't give the kind of leeway to foreign direct investors the way we small countries in the South do. So I'm going to tell you that by taking more revenues from those corporations that get exempt by way of fiscal incentives, we would be able to ease the burden on the chamber members, because we do feel that you all are being overburdened with the taxes that is left on your back and the consumer back. Finally, since we removed, that was still a 4, still a 5, immigration and enhanced legislative reform. How can we still be allowing Guatemalans to get citizenship in this country when we're being faced with one threat from Guatemala? How can we continue to be doing that when in effect, the ministerial discretion that allows the minister to say, as Minister of Immigration, I'm going to waive this thing for you and give you Belizean citizenship. There's something wrong there, brothers and sisters. We have a portion of the population, and I've spoken to some of them, who lives here, who have Belizean nationality, and who has no shame about saying, I'm from Guatemala. That scares me. And that is part of the reason why you see in our logo we show 8867. Because as a younger man in my 20s, I was told by my brother I respect a whole lot, that it's part of a plan to have Belize be returned to Guatemala without one bullet fire. By just planning for 50 years the way they planned, and not plan for 5 years like we planned. They knew that we have a 50-year cycle, nearly 2 generations. They would have this country one way where it's their descendants that is the majority of this country. How far away are we from that, I ask you? Think about it. Now, our passport selling have to stop. I heard it stop, but yet I keep seeing instances of it occurring. This is what God will have to help. I mean, that is crazy. So we're saying if we have to go outside of the BPP talent pool to bring in someone that understands the intricacies of the immigration laws, because I must confess, we don't try to play with do it all. We are as prepared as any member on the Dura team to roll up our sleeve and go form a government. But we won't be doing it like that. We'll be doing it with the inclusion of the members from the chamber and other social partners to help in the planning and the implementation of the policy changes that we need to do. So we don't want to come off as a threat to the business sector, because that's not what we're here to. We will be looking to you all as the entrepreneurs in this country to be partners in the rest of the planning to complement the policies that we would like to see this country do. With that, I'd like to say thank you for having us, and you will be hearing whenever the bell rings 31 candidates for the BPP party, ready and waiting to do the right thing to fix this country.
Thank you very much, Party Leader Rogers. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to take a rest on this. We're going to keep moving. We're going to move right along to the Leader of the Opposition. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Francis Ponce.
Thank you very much.